Donald Trump, as you know, running short on support in the polls. Turns out he may be running out of time, and sooner than you think. We'll explain why the calendar might be Trump's toughest opponent. Then some bad news for Obamacare as Aetna pulls back and rates go up. Will health care now become a big issue on the campaign trail? And if so, who does it help and who does it hurt? Also, the administration releases another 15 Gitmo detainees. Is the president trying to honor his promise to close the place before he leaves office? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman, in tonight for Richard French. Election Day is just 84 days away, but Donald Trump could have less time than that to try and catch Hillary Clinton. Early voting in Minnesota and South Dakota starts in just 6 weeks. Those are the first of 35 states that allow people to cast ballots before November 8th. Back in 2012, nearly 1/3 of all American voters cast their ballots before Election Day. The New York Times explains how pivotal that vote was. Quote, early voting has become a critical, even decisive factor in presidential elections. President Obama was sufficiently ahead in the early vote in Iowa and Nevada in 2012 that his campaign shifted resources from those states to others, according to former advisors, who also credited enthusiastic early voting in 2008 for his victories in North Carolina and elsewhere. And Trump isn't just fighting the calendar and Clinton. Two other people are in the race, and that shrinks the pool of potential voters. This NBC News poll of the four-way race shows Hillary up by 6 points. It also shows Libertarian Gary Johnson and Green Party candidate Jill Stein getting a combined 15% of the vote. That leaves just 85% of the rest of the vote up for grabs, meaning Hillary could come in well below 50% and still win the popular vote. And since she's got a commanding lead in many swing states, she'd be sitting pretty in the White House if it played out that way. All right, let's get some analysis from our panel. We're joined tonight by Shelley Mayer, Democratic Assemblywoman representing the great city of Yonkers. Welcome back. Dominic Carter is here, political journalist and author. And Scott Vanderhoff is joining us. He is a former 5-term Rockland County executive, Republican, and co-chairman of the Palisades Institute of Dominican College. And first of all, Scott, how critical is the calendar for Donald Trump at this point? He's behind, and no candidate has come from this far back, this late in the game, and won the White House, at least in modern election history. But especially when you factor in early voting starts in 6 weeks. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And he's got serious troubles on almost every front, not just the early voting, but financially he's behind. His gaffes of the last couple of weeks have put him very far behind in most polls. You've got this break in terms of other parties that are coming in to divide the voting. And he tries to get back on track. You could see him this week trying to be more foreign policy oriented, etc. Whether he succeeded or not is certainly up for question. But I think he's behind in almost every respect. Shelley, obviously we still have a lot to go. We have the 3 debates as well as the vice presidential debate. Everybody waits for an October surprise, and who knows what might happen in terms of external news, the economy, terrorism, who knows. But at what point, at what point do you begin to look at the calendar and say, well, we need a game changer and we need one fast? If you're Trump, you better have been saying that already. But that being said, do not underestimate Donald Trump. Never count him out as a Hillary supporter. I say we go all the way to the actual election day. It's fine some people are voting early, and that's probably good. I think it's going to be good for Hillary. But this is a candidate who has surpassed every expectation. He will continue to do so. And don't misunderstand that, notwithstanding the polls, there's a base of support for him that is highly motivated. And we don't know what's going to happen. So I say Hillary's doing extremely well. She should keep on the track she's on, but let's not count Donald Trump out. Dominic, every headline since the Democratic convention began has been how badly Donald Trump is doing, how he's slipping in the polls, and how Hillary's increased her lead. At some point, does that begin to feed the process itself? People get used to hearing these headlines, and so it almost cements that as the story?
It depends on who the audience is. If you're a core Trump supporter, absolutely not. They're going to turn out for him. Assemblywoman, if I run for office, I know you're in public office, but I want you to be my campaign manager if I run, because everything that and you're on point as well, county exec, but everything she just said, I completely agree with. And that's the problem. We can talk about early voting, and that does close the door a little bit on Trump. But he is such an X factor that she is right. You cannot take him for granted at any step along the way, because this guy, he's making a complete fool out of himself as of late. But you never know what can happen in politics, and what happens on election day. His base decides to turn out. The Democratic base says, Hillary's got it in the bag. This election is over. She's going to win. That could be a problem.
That's a fair point. And I want to go back to the four-way race that we were showing before that includes Gary Johnson, who is the Libertarian candidate, and Jill Stein, who's the Green Party candidate, because they're polling together 15% in this race. Now, you need to poll at 15% to get on the debate stage. That's the next hurdle for these guys to clear. But if they keep 15% of the vote, that leaves 85%. You can win the popular vote with 43% of the electorate. How much easier or more difficult does that make this election? If you only need to get to 43 or 44 to win the popular vote?
Well, I think it gives Hillary a real advantage at this point. And despite the fact that you don't count Trump out, because we did that through the primary session, this is not the primaries. This is a general election where everybody's going to come out. And so it's a little different. He'd have, the fact that he's not doing advertising and not doing the things that you would normally is really a serious blow to his campaign. He's going to have a magic moment to come around. Having said that, remember, Utah may be out of play as well, because there's an independent presidential candidate there who is now on the ballot, a Republican, I believe. I forget his name. So I think you're right. And of course, all of this relates to electoral votes. It does not relate to the popular vote. So as you point out, if Hillary wins in some of these key states, Florida, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, et cetera, game over.
And Shelley, looking at some of Hillary Clinton's poll numbers, she's at 50 in a couple of them. She's just below 50 in a lot of other ones. If you only need 43, 44% to win this thing, she's already potentially got enough votes locked away, or at least right now.
But as Scott said, you really have to put popular vote aside. This is an electoral college vote. But the point is, she's doing extremely well in the states that she must win, and she has a shot at some states that traditionally Democrats haven't won. That is the real game changer, is getting into these states like, there's a number of them that are in play that we never thought would be in play, and coupled with a very strong showing in the states she must win, like Pennsylvania, where she's significantly ahead, Ohio, Michigan, she really could do even better than expected with electoral college votes, notwithstanding that her popular vote percentage might be lower.
Utah, Georgia, North Carolina, those are some of the Republican stronghold states where she's actually seriously in play. Now, if Trump loses the White House, Republicans could lose a lot more than that. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell reportedly concerned his party could also lose the Senate come November. Democrats only need to take 4 seats to do that, and right now, when you include the 2 independent senators who caucus with Democrats, Republicans hold a 54 to 46 seat advantage. A 4-seat swing would alter the balance of power, assuming Hillary Clinton wins. The Cook Report, a nonpartisan group that analyzes elections, says only one current blue state, Nevada, has a competitive Senate race this year. But there are 7 red state Senate seats that are toss-ups and 3 others that are closer than usual. And the anti-Trump ripple effect could reverberate outside of Washington, could reach state capitals, including Albany. Hillary holds a commanding 30-point lead in New York in the latest poll. That's got Democrats in Albany licking their chops. The head of the Democratic State Senate Campaign Committee says what's happening at the top of the ticket will help people down the line. Here's my question, Scott. We haven't seen a lot of split ticket voting we've seen less of it in recent years, where you vote for, a Republican for the president and then you vote for Democrats, or the other way around for lower seat races. Is there any sense, do you get any sense of how that might go this year? Because a lot of people who are voting for Hillary Clinton might not do so because they love Hillary Clinton. They might do it because they really don't trust or dislike Donald Trump.
I think you're right there, but I think there's even a greater concern for Republicans. And by the way, I think it's, here's Governor Cuomo. He's now working with the Senate Democrats because he sees the writing on the wall, says this could be a serious. Here's the issue. Most Republicans in New York State by poll are not in favor of Trump. They don't vote. They simply don't go out and vote. And that gives the Democrats and all these Senate races an enormous advantage. Not just them, but of course nationally. So there's a very strong anti-Senate sentiment about Trump, just like there's a very strong sentiment. But if people say, I'm not voting, I can't vote for Hillary, I can't get myself to do that, and stay home, that benefits the Democrats, and you could see a shift in the Senate.
Assemblywoman, does down ticket influence really go all the way to the state level, to the assembly level, to the state senate level? I mean, we know that, you know, a big presidential win tends to help in Senate races and House races, but what about on the state level?
Oh, I think it does in certain communities. I think in the communities outside of New York and Long Island and Westchester, where we do in Long Island have serious competitive races where the Democrats want to win seats for the state Senate, the Hudson Valley north of Westchester, we have real races that I think will be impacted, partially because of what Scott said. Some Republicans are just going to sort of say, I'm just keeping out of it this year and stay home. And the other thing is, there really is an opportunity with a very good Senate Democratic majority to do good things for working people. This is what I believe. And I think many people are hungry for that if they see good candidates. It's very dependent on the candidate.
But Dominic, if Hillary's got a 30-point lead in New York, I don't think you're going to see a massive turnout across New York State, especially if that big prize looks like it's already in the bag before you ever get to Election Day.
Well, we'll see what's going to happen. I just don't see a scenario which is going to win New York by by 30 points unless Trump continues along the disaster road that he is doing so. You know, what's going to be interesting at the state level, and you asked your question about will it impact local races? Of course it can, because what's going on right now, and again, I'm not willing to close the door on Trump because I think he's got a few surprises left. And he hasn't started advertising yet. You made the point about advertising, and that's a good point. He's not advertising really in the general election as of yet. But I think that what he's doing right now, let's take Republicans aside out of it for a second. Let's take other voters, let's say in New York. I think he's leaving such a bad taste in the mouths of voters that they may say that the whole party stinks, meaning the Republican Party, and vote down the line against Republicans.
But let me flip that the other way. If it looks like Hillary's going to win the election as we approach Election Day, she'll be elected with the lowest favorability, the lowest approval ratings of anybody in modern history. Can't you see a scenario where voters might say, well, if Hillary's the inevitable president, I'm going to pull the lever or check the box, or however we do it nowadays, for somebody who can put a check on that because, you know, we're going to elect her, Shelley, but we don't really love her?
I've never found that voters behave in the way you just described. First place, I'm not sure her favorability numbers won't change between now and Election Day. Second place, don't forget, a third of voters are not registered in any party right now. There's a lot of people who have no party affiliation or loyalty. So they don't like Trump. They may not love Hillary, but they're going to go in and vote, maybe not very willingly, in my opinion, for Hillary. And then for a local candidate who they know, who they've met, who's come to their door, who they think is a dynamic person. And I don't think they think of some state Senate candidate as being a check on the president. And frankly, I'm not a big believer in all this party check stuff because it doesn't work very well.
Just this additional point, I think with respect to the turnout, I think people will come out because this is the first woman to be elected president. I think there's a whole group of people who may not say she's the best woman we could have had. If Shelley Mayer may have run, we would have been there. But I think there are a lot of people just going to say, I don't be able to vote for the first woman president.
Running for president?
I'm not running for president, but thank you.
Sorry to disappoint you, Scott.
I'm looking for
But
anybody.
I do agree. And particularly there are a number of young women for whom this is pretty much a game changer.
We'll turn the page on RFL. When we come back, Obamacare is back in the news, which usually means bad news. But there are also a lot of healthcare success stories. So we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of Obamacare and debate where we go from here.